Hi everyone, number one Marmaduke fan here. I mentioned Rat Queens in my last video, talking about Cirque du Freak Part 3. I don't know whether I'm going to put this on my regular channel or my uncut channel or not, because this is rated M, and it's got a lot of F-bombs, got a lot of grisly violence and some nudity. I think I've marked off the pages with the nudity, so we hopefully shouldn't be showing that. But I'm going to put this on the uncut channel, I think, just to be safe. So, Rat Queens. I became familiar with this through Diversity in Comics. He reviewed a couple issues of it and said it was surprisingly good. I think he called it like the good SJW book. And yeah, this cover, well, the funny thing about it is that that's not the cover artist. So Fiona Staples does the cover. Rock Upchurch does the interiors, and Rock is really good. So I don't get it. Like, if the whole point of having a different cover artist is to make the book like more sellable, like, A, this doesn't happen. B, like, the scales on this monster are just kind of like flattened, and they're all on a single flat plane. That the halfling is a lot shorter than that, so here she just kind of looks like a, I don't know, like a 4-foot plump woman, where she looks completely different than she is in the book. The dwarf girl is just sort of like statically standing in one spot in like a horse stance, just holding my sword out. Her sword does. I think her sword looks a little like that in the book, come to think of it. Oh, nothing appealing about this cover whatsoever. Get like a low view, like underneath them, so they're all like scattering out and they look more chaotic. This is just so stiff. Yeah. But actually, the art is one of the strengths of this. So if you look on the back of this, I'm not going to read all these, but Comics for Girls, Spandex Not Required. The Mary Sue Capeless Crusader, who will remember, is the guy who literally would go on Twitter and say he won't have both sides of a discussion on his website, even though he would invite a troll who is a man pretending to be a woman, write an article that he knew was full of crap. So much fake news. Unleash the Fanboy, Panels and Pixels, Newsarama. It's all like, this is so feminist, this is so much body diversity, funny, irreverent, girl power. So this is clearly coded to say, like, this is a story about like 4 Hillary Clinton supporters having a D&D session. That's not really what it is, but that's how I think of it. It's not like a Tolkien-style fantasy where you're supposed to like be absorbed into the world and kind of be enriched by the world. This is a D&D style fantasy world where they're all irreverent, they're all very 21st century in their attitudes and their speech, they're always dropping F-bombs, they're doing the crazy things that crazy D&D people do. So part of what's confusing to me, SJW books in general are confusing to me, even if they have good art. So why is it that you can have, the first thing I did is I went into problematic glasses mode. So I put on my problematic glasses and I said, hey, wait a second, this isn't feminist. That's for the male gaze. Look at those boobs. That's for the male gaze. Boy, I love all this male gaze. And there might even be more. Look at that cheesecake pinup art showing off her butt. Male gaze. So that was my initial reaction. And I kind of like put 2 and 2 together and I said, oh, this is why people virtue signal. It's so they can get away with doing things they shouldn't be able to get away with. So by the logic of, the feminist critique of comic book art, you should not be doing art like this, even in a tongue-in-cheek style, because you are objectifying women. You are subjecting women to, and it's literally like all men, like Rock Upchurch, Stefan Sejic, Curtis Weeb. So a bunch of guys have figured out that they can do cheesecakey, porny shots of beautiful women, as long as they virtue signal correctly that, hey, this is a girl power book. So this thing, like, I saw a t-shirt going viral on TeePublic that was getting recommended all the time. I don't know who would wear this, but it was like Sailor Moon beaten to a bloody pulp, where the whole point of it is like girl power, girls can fight too, girls can get their asses kicked and be all bloodied up and battered and bruised. Yes, but do you really want to wear that on a t-shirt? Do you want to advertise you like beat-up women on your t-shirt? So this, right, like there's this recurring thing of like all 4 characters beaten to a bloody pulp, and looking confident and sassy on the cover of the book, which is actually kind of people absorbing one of the criticisms of SJW books. One of the criticisms of SJW books is that The characters never struggle. They never have to overcome difficulty. Everything's super easy for them. So this is kind of a bit of a twisteroo on that, where actually these characters do have to struggle. They do get their butts kicked a lot, and that's kind of cool for the fight scenes anyway. But then they're also trying to get the points of saying, look, we'll show our characters super duper beat up. So that's their way of kind of cueing to feminists, hey, give us a break. You'll like. I don't even know if feminists would like this. They like to write puff pieces about how girl powery it is. But that was the 2 and 2 I put together. Virtue signaling is a way to get the double standard applied to you, to your benefit. You want to draw porny shots of women? Do the feminist virtue signaling, and you will get the cool write-up in the Mary Sue, even if you probably shouldn't. I kind of barely read this. I read it, and then they do some annoying 21st century cell phone thing, and then I just dip out, and I just couldn't stand all of the 21st century gags. So, it's such obnoxious humor. I guess that's part of the point, since it's sort of like it's a D&D campaign. But, well, congratulations. You set out to make obnoxious humor to evoke a D&D campaign, and you successfully worked in a lot of obnoxious humor. I don't know. Maybe if you have a high tolerance for that, you'll enjoy that. The good thing I was going to say is I think that Rock has a lot of excellent facial expressions. So whenever I got annoyed, I just stopped reading the dialogue, and I just pour over the art. And you can tell what's going on based on Rock's visual storytelling. So that's some solid stuff, right? And the action scenes, okay, yeah, this is an example of dwarf girl getting cut up and beat up real bad. They're kind of like diving around and trying to strategize. Here's like magic rockabilly elf girl getting her arm crushed. So yeah, they're having a tough time. They're not magically beating everybody in a single hit. One of the things that the back of the book boasts about is how three-dimensional these characters are, which means there are some scenes where they show some of their backstory. But I don't think that's quite what I'd call a three-dimensional character yet. Like the closest, I think, to a three-dimensional character in this book is Dee, where Dee is supposed to be a atheist cleric. It's so ironic. But instead of being a cleric for like a pseudo-Christian religion, she's a cleric for what's literally Cthulhu. Like they just copied and pasted Cthulhu into here. They called it Nergoth or something, and Dee's going through this like weird atheist phase where she's not sure she believes in Nergoth anymore. And the reason I say this is the closest thing to a three-dimensional character is she has something that a lot of people might actually identify with. Like I don't think there are many people who identify with shroom chomping hippie hobbit girl lesbian here. Like that's a pretty specific group. I don't know. There's not that much character to Rockabilly Elf Girl, except that she's super cool and she says the F-bomb a lot and she beats up all the guys. And we'll talk about Dwarf Girl later in the next book. But for book one, Dee's kind of like the character who gets the most fleshing out. Even when SJWs do a character that is kind of outside of their clique, they still have to like make it work in it. So this is like the closest thing to like where a Christian kid or a like raised Catholic kid could identify with Dee, but then they can't have that. So they've got to make the religion like a weird satanic Cthulhu religion, again with the crop circles and everything. So like who does this describe? Like it almost describes a real type of person who could identify with this character. Lots of people identify with growing up and like falling out of the faith you were raised in, but still loving your family and then still not being sure what quite to think. But nobody identifies with that in a Wiccan satanic religious context, because there's almost nobody who follows that. So there are no characters for normies to connect with in this book, even though I think Dee is probably one of the best examples of the closest thing to that. So they set up the super duper bad guy who's like super emotionally conflicted, and he's sorry about his dead wife, boo-hoo, he's gonna kill a million people because he's sorry about his dead wife. Here's another weird thing. Okay, so this is one of the like random silly Billy gags. So there's like this guy named Gary who's part of the Town Watch, and he'll say something stupid, and then they'll say, "Shut the bleep up, Gary," and then he just says, "Great bleeping party," and then she just randomly breaks a bottle and says she'll kill him, and he says, "I'll see myself out," and then he gets punched right in the face by Dee. Hooray, unprovoked assault. In silly Billy humor, this makes me identify with your characters so much and look up to them as people, because you know what good people do? They are kind of irrationally angry at someone who's coded to be a nerd, and then they punch him for no reason. That's what sympathetic, good characters do. Hooray! This is so feminist! Yay! Kung Fu Action Girl beats up 20 dudes with a stick. Because, you know, bigots, I think she should have been able to beat up 100 dudes with a stick. Bigots. Don't girls have power in fantasy storytelling? Nothing else comes of it. We just shows up, beats up 20 dudes, and we don't know what the heck that had to do with anything afterwards. Okay, so then we get the backstory on Dwarf Girl. And she has a beard, because remember when people were talking about dwarves having beards in Lord of the Rings, and that was kind of a meme for a while? Yay. This is the classic, like, Disney princess feels trapped and wants to, you know, go live in a whole new world story. Oh, Brienne of Tarth. Brienne of Tarth is a good example of what this is trying to be. So, Brienne of Tarth is this character in Game of Thrones, where the whole point of Brienne of Tarth is that she is a masculine woman. She's tall, she's kind of gargantuan, and she's good at fighting. And you would think that that would be the kind of thing that, you know, a right-winger would hate, but Brienne of Tarth works as a character because in the context of her world, she feels unusual. It's generally a world where there are strict gender roles. In fact, in the books, the first time we meet Brienne of Tarth is through Catelyn Stark. And Catelyn Stark is a very traditional woman. She believes that, you know, women, they need to give birth to children. That's kind of their duty. That's their struggle. She doesn't like seeing Brienne of Tarth, you know, swing a sword around. And then sort of over time, Brienne of Tarth wins Catelyn's respect, and they come to respect one another. So what that means is we're kind of given a traditional perspective on Brienne of Tarth through Catelyn, which helps us understand how weird Brienne of Tarth is. And then then we over time come to love Brienne of Tarth as a character and realize that for her, being this mannish is actually not always a good thing. She looks kind of freakish. For this is trying to do a Brienne of Tarth story where she just wants to be a super duper tough girl who fights with swords just like her brother. And none of it comes off successful. So number one is like the silly Billy humor of, oh, the beard, the dwarves have beards, but it's also a symbol of tradition and oppression of women, so she's going to shave her beard. So it's so silly and doesn't quite work. And her mom is super duper supportive and a drunk. And her brother says, okay, her brother makes a pretty reasonable argument. So the dad has enrolled her brother in the tournament. You're only supposed to enroll one person from your family in the tournament. She wants to be in the tournament. He says, well, no, I've already enrolled him, and by tradition, you can only have one. So she's going to model. And modeling means wearing a heavy suit of armor and practicing with a sword to show off the product of the dwarven clan. So actually, modeling isn't like wearing a bikini. It's actually a pretty masculine role, modeling in this dwarven world. So the brother says, sis, let's just stick with what we do best. Which isn't really a sexist comment. He's just saying, I'm better at sword fighting than you are, right? So it's kind of a jerky comment, but he's not saying, you're a woman, your place is in your modeling bikini work, and then she punches him across the face, and then they talk to their dad, and then she smacks him across the head again. So even though these are dwarves, and they're supposed to be kind of like brusque and rough and manly and beating each other up all the time, she's assaulted him twice for making a comment. If they wanted a gender politics message, what if they had the two of them just like brawl it out right there? That would kind of communicate, okay, in this culture, it's normal for you to have a fight out over little comments because they value fighting or something like that. The way this comes off is she just looks like an abusive sibling. He's not hitting her back. Hit her back, dude. Are you scared to hit a girl? And so at the tournament, there's like all the dwarves. One of them's got a silly Bowie name. Heath of Clan House Brew. I didn't think that was that silly. That just means they're a dwarven clan that makes beer. I can't take this guy seriously. What? Fine. We gotta break people out of our story with our silly Billy humor. It's so important. And so there's a cool, awesome Supergirl dwarf who's got like a rat for a symbol, and she shaved her beard because she's said F tradition, and it's literally got the F word. F tradition, slams down her visor, I'm gonna go beat up the dudes, and she's so inspired by this, and the evil, nasty, sexist men make crass comments about her at the modeling session, so she beats them up again, and then she says F tradition, and then she shaves off her beard. So F tradition, this is the moral of this story. F tradition. That's not an inspiring moral. What they're trying to connect with is people who feel trapped by tradition, who feel like traditional ideas are preventing them from identifying the way they want, or living their life the way they want. And so they dumb that down to F tradition. F tradition is not sophisticated. F tradition doesn't tell me if a tradition is good or bad. It just tells me that you hate tradition. It doesn't give me any insight into whether the tradition is good or bad, why the tradition is good or bad, what you intend to replace the tradition with. It's shallow. I think it's Michael Knowles who says millennials like to have the image of the thing without the thing. This is like Dungeons and Dragons. It's the appearance of fantasy storytelling without the actual weight and themes of fantasy storytelling. F tradition is not a theme of fantasy storytelling. The Tolkien-esque style of fantasy storytelling is rooted in tradition. It's rooted in like having an ancient society and ancient religions, and that means something to people. They aren't just there as window dressing. And then this is the moral relativism message. So Rockabilly Girl's mom was an arcane witch, and for some reason she decided to live in a town where it's clearly supposed to be like a medieval Catholic town where they hate witchcraft and they want to kill witches. Why are you here if you know that? And so her mom explains her worldview to her child. And this doesn't fit in any fantasy context. This only makes sense in a 21st century hashtag I love the science context. I will never BS you, Hannah. You're going to struggle with this your whole life. You were born to parents who won't ever fit in. We're so weird and unique, but we believe in what we do and who we are. Down to our damn bones, we are proud of the arcane traditions we bravely keep alive, while everyone else debates ethics and morality. There is only one guiding principle in this family: learning. Right, Mom? The science! Exactly. Not a fear of knowledge, but embracing every facet of it. It's what sets us apart, places us higher than everyone else. So they are explicitly saying we're better than these like backwards religious pseudo-Catholic people. The only thing we worship is knowledge in the science and the pursuit of knowledge, in meaning arcane, like black magic or whatever. And we don't care. That makes us better than people who think about ethics and morality. And then the bad old Catholic crusader sneaks up behind her and just kills her out of the blue without a trial, without a judge, jury. He's just made himself. He just executes her in the street and he prays and then he kills her. Oh no, Mom! I have a question. How do I know that sneaking up behind a woman and executing her without a trial is wrong if I don't have ethics and morality? If all I have is knowledge, and I know she's a witch, and I know that these witches worship some kind of Satan creature, well, who's to say I shouldn't do the crusader execution thing? Here, well, to have that, you need ethics and morality. But ethics and morality are what the stupid people worry about. Where's the morality? Where's the meaning? I don't see anything. And then later it turns out that I guess her dad is Satan. Like, that's the thing. There's actually kind of a moving scene where I'll spoil this. She takes her hair down while she's naked, and she reveals that she has like devil horns under there. So clearly, like, her dad is some kind of Satan dude, or whatever the equivalent of that would be in Dungeons and Dragons. But it's also clearly supposed to be like, this is like coming out as trans to your significant other, and them not liking that message. That's what I'm guessing based on the context of all the rest of this. This is way too 21st century. Sometimes it's cutesy 21st century. I'm going to use the magic cell phone kind of gags. But the entire worldview is 21st century. That's four girls playing Dungeons and Dragons who are all Hillary Clinton supporters. That's the intellectual diversity of Rat Queens. I didn't talk about Stefan Sejcik's art. Stefan Sejcik is a lot stronger in this book. The last book I read by Sejcik was Aquaman, and I thought it looked slapdash, like he just cranked it out in 30 minutes. This is a lot more polished and quite lovely. Sejcik still does the thing where I think he kind of like cranks up the... Got a phone call right as I was wrapping up. I was just going to say, Sejcik, I think he's a lot better in this book than he's been in other books. Still a little bit dramatic. I really like Rock Upchurch. He kind of won the art battle for me, but two really solid artists. Just don't read the dialogue and just look at the pretty pictures, and I think you will enjoy yourself. So my conclusion, yeah, it is the best SJW book I've read in terms of good art direction, attempting to actually have developed characters where they actually struggle and overcome things, but still very much in the SJW tradition of politics being trickle 21st century politics being brought into a medieval fantasy setting, very silly billy 21st century profane humor. Not for the kids. I don't know. I just rather read something that makes me uplifted. So that's that. With that, I'm number one Marmaduke fan. I love you guys, and I'll catch you later.